both somehow dealing with contemporary art and I would say even communication of it, in the sense that I mean you're producing and Andrea is creating, so somehow the topic of communication between the exhibition and an audience, it's something that you're dealing with. So I would just try to bring the topic of exhibition into the school topic. So, I mean, apparently exhibitions are more and more diffused in the context of school and are taking a role more and more crucial for presenting the world of the students, and they seem to somehow to engage the world of the education with the world of the practice. So I would love to ask you, I mean, the role of school exhibitions for design and art nowadays, in your opinion.
Okay. Of course, they are very personal opinions, and
sure.
I'm not so in design, I'm much more in contemporary art, of course. And I would say the school are currently the only place where something can happen in terms of experimentation, in particular in those times, in those hard times, where, I mean, everything is so fixed, it's so regular, there is a lot of fear, I would say, in the institutions. So schools, I would say, even if the schools are obliged to recruit new students from everywhere in the world, are the last place where something can be challenged, something can happen under pressure. And I will say it's happening, probably not now, not in Italy, or not in the schools I know, but even in the well-established schools, such as the Royal College of Art, I can see something happening, and I can see the invention of new formats and sizes and ways to think about contemporary art production or contemporary art practices. So that's the role, I would say, pushing experimentation since the beginning, since the way to present a piece and till how to produce and how to present an exhibition. I mean, it's the place for experimentation. It should stay and should be forever. I hope that the place stays for experimentation. It's quite easy answer, but it's what I think.
Yes.
I think the exhibition serves three roles for three different groups. So the first group is the students, obviously, and that is, in theory, to tutors the most important group. And for them, it's something to aim for that's more than just a degree, right? So at the end of a business administration course, the point is to get their qualification and go on and get a job. But for them, for the whole 3 years they're doing it, the whole focus is on that show. It's on the actual process of creation, thinking about ways of communicating their idea, and so the focus for them when they're working is in the now. So the second group of people is for the university. It's for the university to show off the talent of their students, which can sometimes lead to clashes with students, especially like at a big university that I work at, where it's they're desperate, especially with the increase in fees we have now in the UK. It's very much about attracting as many students as possible, and that can make it quite messy and cause this sort of conflict between what the students want and what the university wants. And then the third group, of course, is industry, and industry want exhibitions to spot new talents and cherry pick the best students. So I think that's the three accepted roles of exhibitions. But I think, again, actually, I'm starting to notice in London that that's changing, and I think a lot of students are now leading a charge against that accepted model of working in an exhibition, and like taking the exhibition into their own hands, organizing it themselves, fundraising it themselves, setting it up, getting their own space and creating it how they want, rather than trying to reflect the university, which I think is a great shift.
So somehow you're saying that, the world of the practice, of the professional practice, is more and more into the school, or just students are trying to somehow, go out as much as possible from, the educational context that you create already during, the years of the normal education years, collective practices and these kind of things. So in this sense, I would love to ask you something about the relation between, how can I say, the professional world in the educational world, because now it's a border, it's a kind of limit that is blurring as much, very much. I'm referring, for instance, to, I don't know, school department like Olaf Eliasson Institute for Spatial Experiment. It is something like a school, but also a kind of place for the practice already, I mean, still in the education system, but already out of the education system. So, what do you think about this border that is blurring as much as possible now?
I think it's very good. I think it's something that was mentioned earlier as well. It might not have been here actually, but a lot of, especially in master's programs, you get now a lot of industrial projects. So, for instance, a company will come in and set a brief for something they need solving, then the students do it, but the intellectual property remains with the students at the end of the brief, which is really nice. And it gives them some experience of working under those kind of pressures, which is important, of course, when they go on to find employment. But it also introduces a new type of brief. Like a lot of the times, the work you're doing the students are doing in university is very playful and experimental, and they get to do whatever they like within a certain limit, and then to be given a really tight brief where a result is needed, and often there is actually someone from the company that set it coming in, doing tutorials, looking for entirely different things to what the tutors are looking at, actually gives them real-world experience. And then to expand on that, something I'm noticing now, which I didn't notice when I was at university, is the amount of students already grouping together that have common practice ideas to sort of talk about what they're going to do afterwards. Like that vocational model of, I'll graduate, I'll get a degree, then I'll go and work, you know, in the UK we have this problem with interning, but you know, I'll go and intern for a while and then I'll go on and become a junior designer and then a senior designer and so on and so forth. It's kind of blurring because they're already thinking independently and they're already starting to think about how they can straight away apply what they've learned. And so in that sense, business coming into education is really important because then it gives them a kickstart in getting started once they go out on their own, I suppose.
Andrea, what do you think?
Thank you. Thinking to design, I agree completely, of course, and even to fashion. Thinking to contemporary art, it's a little bit different. What happened recently in the schools I know, I would say the Italian schools, is a strange process. I would say an industrialization process, something bizarre. I had the opportunity to select or to be part of selection committees, and I had a clear experience that there is something happening in terms of industrialization. So there is something happening in terms of presentations, a way of presentation of work. So there is a format that is now well established, and this format, I mean, this way to cut, reduce, produce, and somehow communicate your own work as an artist or wannabe artist, probably is something that I really don't like or trust. So the industrialization or the commitment from a certain area of industry has coming in the School of Fine Arts is something I'm not so sure about. On the other hand, I'm still thinking that workshops are the places, I'm speaking about studios of artists or ateliers or workshops are the places where something happens, and it's a place where an artist's career can change, a young artist's career can change. So I still believe that for young contemporary artists, the school should be a place for complete experimentation. It can be the place where you can do whatever you never do in your entire life after. So please, let's do it and try to avoid any constriction, any request of the market, any idea of taste. So, but I'm probably too radical. I'm thinking much more to an idea of this education. But I think we are not exactly in the same field. So thinking about design, if I think design and profession, I think something different. I mean, a short experience.
I agree completely with the idea that university is a place for play and experimentation. I don't think anyone would ever deny that. But I think one of the things that can happen is it's a tough world for designers and artists especially. And so to have actually a bleed through between the real world and the sort of enclosed bubble of university is really important. Obviously there's still got to be a huge amount of space for play and for experimentation because that's how all the new stuff happens. That's why all these students are here for Milan show, because they're going to come up with the new stuff. They're going to be the future of design, and that comes through that space for play and experimentation.
Andrea, can I ask you to explain a little bit more what you mean when you say that you are more for the kind of diseducation format?
I think that going back to the question of exhibition places in art school, I think that there is still so much to do in terms of inventing a format of an exhibition which is not only presenting object in a space and not trying to push the life or past life in a space by reenacting, by performing, by putting inside something that comes from a border, such as music, fashion, or whatever. It can be somehow attracting or entertaining. I still believe there is a lot to do in terms of communication. And an exhibition can happen really inside a device, or in between a device and the outside world, or in between your nighttime and your daytime. So there is still a lot to do, and when I suggest there is a lot to experiment on, I think that the way we have to stretch as teachers, and the way we can push or we can stretch the perception of a young artist, a probably artist, is push him in a direction, or push them all together in a direction which is not just putting object in a space. I mean, that's what I'm thinking, but of course, it's a desire, there are constrictions, there are rules, there are roles, there is the need to present something that can probably be part of a system and probably be solved in the future, in the immediate future. So, but I think there is time. I mean, a student has 22 years, so 23, so there is still time to produce something. And we are in hard times, but we are even in chanceful times, because what really changed in the last crisis months or years, it's the perception of our time and the need of our time and the need of our money in the time we spend in doing nothing or in trying to do something. I think I'm a little bit abstract. I have something in mind, but
that's fine. Okay. No, so you were talking about where the exhibitions were taking place. I mean, imagining, future or possibilities. I was just wondering if you can say something about the phenomenon of the exhibition spaces related to the art schools. I mean, talking about contemporary art scene, I'm referring to the famous case study of Porticus, but also Waltz Institute in San Francisco. I mean, the very interesting space living in your head that is in Geneva, related to the head school. I was just wondering what kind of exhibition space, what kind of Kunsthalle, what kind of museum is the space related to the art school? Is it an interesting format for you, or just, a platform for failure, like we were talking before?
Well, I think the space you didn't mention was the digital space. Sure. Like, that's the biggest space for any university or for any student or for any designer or artist. Like, no matter how big and famous your university is, no matter how many people visit your exhibition, you're going to live on in the web space, and you're going to have your work seen ultimately by a lot more people in the web space. And there still hasn't been, I've still never seen a really original and convincing model of exhibiting online. At the moment, it tends to be just a documentary of an exhibition, or just the work in sort of a reduced format, lower resolution images, shorter videos, preview format stuff. It would be really amazing to see, and what I hope comes out soon, and probably should have done by now, is a really, really amazing and original online space for exhibiting things, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely. I would be really happy and curious to see what can happen online, what can be still organized online. If I think to the model you were quotating and considering the head and so on, I'm not really somebody who follows exhibition in schools. I try to do it as much as possible because I'm looking for models and cases more than for objects and in spaces. So I think the model is the world. It's not a closed space. It's not a white cube. It's not just an empty cave. It's outside. I agree. That's why I really agree with you. Outside is not only where we are now. Actually, we are in the middle. I mean, on the border between outside and inside. But I think it's an interesting place. Even if I really would like to avoid this Eucharistic position of being up and not in front of. It's not our position, no, but it's a usual position of a professor, even if so many professors try to break this convention. So I'm convinced by the models I saw years ago. The model I saw years ago when the Cyprus Biennial failed, the United Nations Plaza project in Berlin, and again in Mexico. I don't know if somebody quoted it, but it was a very, very interesting guess. It has been quoted as well. Very, very interesting model.
I look into the editorial stuff because we talked a lot about the Cyprus failure.
Okay, so it was really an interesting model to think about. An idea of exhibition, what come up, it's still existing and resisting and producing knowledge. And I would say that the Flux Journal it's something that come up or has this strong heritage of what happened at the time. And I can see today a generation of young artists still in the wake of that experience. And that was the most important thing to me. So it was more a model, an open model, something like that, than a place.
Okay, so maybe we're going to close. I mean, maybe last question. I don't know, because you mentioned. Oh,
no,
no, I mean, you mentioned the digital space, no? But then in the talks before, Andrea Brands and Gianluigi were talking, and also in the first, at the beginning of this conversation, we talk of the web space as a space for teaching, no? And then it seems that it's a model that maybe it's not working, or is it working? Or
I think they're entirely right this morning. They were talking about, not this morning, just about an hour ago, they were talking about MOOCs, right? So massive online open courses. You can sign up, it's a few weeks, you do it in the evenings in your spare time and you learn stuff. At the moment, that's coming out of places like MIT, they're doing it in business courses, MITx. And they were saying earlier that would be impossible to do for art and design. Because how can you teach someone to draw? How can you get the same time? And they're right, it's impossible to do for art and design as we know it now, but you neglect the fact that what types of art and design might come out of that type of learning. Like there might be entirely new forms of creativity that we can't even foresee because, you know, we haven't been there yet, we haven't tried it out. And much like they were saying with 3D printing, the first few years, the first decades maybe, will just produce crap that will filter down. But eventually, these things will align, things will emerge that might be entirely new and entirely exciting. And yes, the older models of learning, and you know, you start off with a year of life drawing, and then you go on into making stuff out of clay, and then, you know, by the end of it, you're doing websites, whatever, right? But that probably wouldn't work. But we don't know what might work. It might be entirely new and really exciting things that are a lot more in touch with the world as it is now. That come out of that, that come out of the great, you know, 300-year-old art universities. We just don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I believe that digital space, to say it's an issue and can become something very interesting. I think that the point is the border between the digital space and the hardware. I think to the model that probably Jeremy Dell worked so well on, and the model of Operate in Manchester, or the model of producing the work for a biennial, and how to involve a school, and how to transform any singular experience in something that becomes part of a shared experience and part of a community. So there is something very interesting between the idea of individuality, of the fake, not completely true or fake idea of community online, and what is happening in the world, that has to be explored. So the polysingularity, so this idea of being singular, so maintain your own identity, but being poly at the same time. There is something that is going on now online, I think. I'm not sure, but I see some places. It's something important we have to take care. And what is going on, and I go back to Jeremy Deller, it is a very interesting way to deal between inside and outside, considering the inside part of the outside. Once again, I'm very abstract. I'm not answering, but I think we have a short time, so... but they are models. And when I was thinking about Jeremy Deller and how he actually put the whole experience of the Manchester Parade online, I think there is an affection, there is something there that worked as a model of teaching or producing knowledge.
Okay, so this is you want to add something, or I think this format of the parade and this idea of okay. Okay. Let's say that we close with the parade.
Okay, just very quickly. I think I'm not sure you're talking a few levels above. I can think, but I think you're talking about the idea of learning in a group and doing things for a community versus this potential that online has for just learning on your own in your room at night. And I think you're going to get very different outcomes, but I don't think that changes the validity of what those outcomes might be. Obviously, you need a lot of experience to design or do art potentially well, but just because I think that there is a potential for the experience of a single person who lives in that way to have just as valid input on a design or art process as a large group of students that spend every day for 5 years together. Obviously, like I say, it might not work. It might just be a proliferation of rubbish. People making websites for their cats, but it could be awesome.